Jordan. What brings you here at this hour? When I opened the front door after the intercom rang, I found my grandson, Jordan, standing there completely soaked. As Jordan looked down and turned around, I saw his sister, Alice, soundly asleep on his back. I gently took Alice into my arms. Please, could you let Alice stay for dinner and the night? Jordan's voice was almost drowned out by the sound of the heavy rain. Come inside for now, I urged. My husband and I led Jordan and Alice into the house. Seeing our grandson for the first time in 3 years, we couldn't help but marvel at how much he had grown. Contrary to our warm feelings, Jordan sat in front of the meal we had prepared without touching it, his gaze fixed downwards. Jordan, can you tell us what happened? Jordan briefly looked up, but quickly averted his eyes when our gazes met. Jordan, we can't help if you don't talk to us. My husband said, his tone growing firmer out of frustration. Startled, Jordan then began to speak in a voice as faint as a mosquito's buzz. After pouring his heart out, Jordan made a resolute statement. I'd be a nuisance if I stayed. Please take care of Alice, he pleaded. With those words, Jordan stood up and dashed towards the entrance. Hey, wait. My husband tried to stop him, but Jordan, now nearly as tall as him, shrugged him off. Don't be ridiculous. I can't take care of a child. Furious, my husband spat out those words before chasing after Jordan again and grabbing him in a tight hold. Please, at least take care of Alice. Jordan pleaded, giving up his and hanging his head low. My name is Linda. I live with my husband, Steve. Looks like it's going to rain this evening. Every morning, Steve would mutter about the day's weather while flipping through the newspaper and munching on bread, laid out on top of it. Come on, I always tell you not to dirty the newspaper. Either read it or eat. Linda, it might be best to do in the morning if you want to jog outside. He said, clearly not listening to me. This is the usual scene at our home. Steve, 2 years my senior at 62, is facing retirement this year. With no hobbies to speak of, he has always been all about his work. I've heard of people suddenly getting dementia or becoming recluses when they stop working. We need to find something for him to get into before it's too late. I remembered discussing this with a colleague at my part-time job. Steve, what are you going to do with all the free time once you stop working next year? Well, I don't know. He pondered, glancing around before his eyes settled on a photo displayed on the shelf. It was a picture of me and Steve, our son Brian, his wife Emily, and our grandchildren, Jordan and Alice. All smiling warmly. It was taken during Alice's first birthday celebration. I wonder how Jordan and Alice are doing. Steve suddenly asked. I'm not sure. We haven't seen our son's family in about 3 years. They live about an hour's drive from us. A distance that should make visits easy, yet it seems Emily has been avoiding us. And influenced by her, Brian has become quite distant as well. Even when I send emails saying, let's meet up, we're always turned down, and they don't even return our Christmas cards. Jordan loves fish, didn't him? Yeah. I remember him saying, let's go fishing together. Really? When did they make such a promise? But it's true, Jordan adored Steve. I'm flooded with memories of Jordan from when he was still in elementary school. We promised to go together once I retired, since I'd have plenty of time. Well, Jordan is in his first year of high school now, maybe he's realized that catching fish isn't that simple. Steve said this with a wistful smile, sipping his coffee. It was clear that our relationship with our son's family changed after Brian remarried Emily 5 years ago. After graduating high school, Brian started working at a construction company, where he met Claire, an office worker 4 years his senior, and they got married. Jordan was their child. Claire, with her calm and steady presence, seemed to guide Brian in the right direction. I was taken aback the first time I saw Brian, who hardly ever did household chores at home, skillfully making soup. I was always grateful to her for marrying Brian, but she would just laugh and shake her head whenever I thanked her. Brian is so straightforward. When I showed him how I cut carrots with a knife in my left hand, he tried to do the same. Even though he's right-handed. Oh my. Thanks to Brian, our home is always filled with laughter. It seemed like the three of them were living happily, which made me happy. Sorry for asking you to pick up Jordan from daycare on such short notice the other day. Here, these are your favorite sweets. That's so sweet of you, but you don't need to worry about it. I'm free after 4 p.m. from my part-time job, so I can always pick him up. Thank you so much. She was always polite and maintained a good relationship with us. I thought this happy life would continue forever. When Jordan was 9, Claire was diagnosed with cancer. The cancer was advanced, and she was given 6 months to live. Please forgive me, and take care of Jordan. She said this to me when we were alone in her hospital room. Don't apologize. I wish I could take your place. I was close to tears. I've been so happy these past 10 years. Brian and Jordan have made me laugh enough for a lifetime. I want them to keep smiling, always. You and Steve too. She said this with a gentle smile. And just as the doctors predicted, she passed away quietly on a crisp autumn day. After that, Brian and Jordan started their life as just the two of them, but since Brian often came home late due to work, I started visiting Jordan's house every day after my part-time job. On weekends, if Brian was busy, we happily took care of Jordan at our place. Do you want to go anywhere? Let's go wherever you and Grandpa want to go. Jordan was never selfish and often observed the adults around him. I was a bit worried about his tendency to be considerate towards us, his grandparents. We should keep a close eye on Jordan. Yes, we should. So, when Jordan occasionally said, I wanted to eat fish, during our shopping trips, we were delighted to hear his honest thoughts. Actually, I'm thinking about getting remarried. Brian told us this when Jordan was 11. The woman was a 23-year-old named Emily. Emily was 10 years younger than Brian and worked part-time at a bar. It seems they hit it off when Brian happened to visit the bar. I was worried, but when Brian brought her home, my concerns only deepened. Nice to meet you all. Emily arrived wearing a baggy sweatshirt, a miniskirt, large earrings, and carrying a designer bag. She was beautiful but seemed to lack common sense, perhaps due to her youth. You're only 23, right? If you marry Brian, you'll suddenly become the mother of an 11-year-old. Are you sure you're ready for that? I asked her seriously. We'll figure it out, right? Yeah, I think we'll be fine. The casual exchange between Emily and Brian made Steve and me exchange worried glances. Despite our reservations, we couldn't voice our concerns, and 2 months later, Brian remarried. Could we live in the house your brother used to live in? We want to save money for our child's future. When Steve's brother's family moved abroad 4 years ago, he told Steve he could use their old house however he liked. And the ownership was transferred to my husband. Steve had intended to rent out the house but had neglected it due to his busy schedule. It would help us if you lived there. But you know, it's in a different school district, so Jordan will have to transfer schools. That's okay. He'll adjust to the new school quickly. And so, they moved to the house owned by Steve, about an hour's drive from ours, and started their life as a family of 3. Until then, I had seen Jordan almost every day, but once Emily quit her job to become a full-time homemaker, I no longer needed to visit Jordan's house, and our opportunities to meet dwindled. Still, Brian would leave Jordan with us about 3 times a month. Though the reason was that Brian and Emily wanted to spend time alone, we were happy to be with Jordan. Jordan, despite being a child, seemed to be considerate of Brian and Emily, which worried me. Jordan, are you enjoying your new life? Yeah, it's fun. I was sad to transfer from my elementary school, but I've made new friends. It must have been tough for him, having to transfer schools because of his parents' decisions. I wanted to ask about his relationship with Emily, but I hesitated to mention her by name and didn't pursue it further. All right then. Let's go to a hamburger restaurant with us today. Really? Yay. I'm going to eat lots. Seeing Jordan smile without a care in the world brought me some relief. A year later, Alice was born. We want to throw a party to introduce Alice. We want to celebrate her half-birthday. Brian and Emily began asking for money on every occasion, using Alice as an excuse. We never did this when Jordan was her age. Although it made me feel conflicted. For the sake of adorable Alice and also to give Jordan some pocket money, I sent them a generous amount whenever they reached out. Once Alice was a bit older, Brian and Emily often left both children with us. We need a break once in a while. You must be happy to spend so much time with your grandchildren. After handing over the children at the doorstep, Brian and Emily would quickly leave. Watching them go left me with mixed feelings, but seeing Jordan, Alice, and Steve playing together in the room warmed my heart. Jordan adored his younger sister and took great care of Alice. Alice, in turn, seemed to trust Jordan completely, calming down even when upset if Jordan sang to her gently. While we were concerned about Brian and Emily, we were very happy to spend time with our grandchildren. However, after Alice's first birthday, Jordan and Alice stopped coming over altogether. Jordan is in middle school now, maybe he's just busy. With that thought, I called Brian. I'll be in the area this Sunday. Can I stop by to see you? Let me check with Emily. The conversation ended abruptly, and a curt text followed stating, "We have plans, so it won't be possible." Despite my efforts to reach out to Brian and Emily repeatedly, they always found excuses to prevent us from seeing Jordan and Alice. Did I say something to upset them? I thought I had always been supportive, offering financial help and taking care of the grandchildren whenever asked. All we could do was hope for Jordan and Alice's happiness. 3 years passed. Jordan became a first-year high school student, and Alice turned 4. On a day when not seeing my grandchildren had become the norm, I happened to spot Jordan. That day, I was going to the next town to watch a movie with a friend. Around 5 p.m., while waiting for the bus, a bike swiftly passed by in front of me, and it was Jordan. He was wearing a square backpack with the name of a chain restaurant, seemingly making deliveries. Jordan. I called out his name in surprise, but he didn't look back. Could you have mistaken him for someone else? I immediately shared the story with my Steve upon returning home, but he was hesitant to believe it. I couldn't possibly mistake our grandson's face. But, a high school student working a delivery job. Is Brian not earning enough? I don't know. We've been sending $500 to each of the grandchildren for their birthdays, but maybe that's not enough for Jordan. Even though we couldn't see them, I had assumed that Brian's family was happily living their lives somewhere we didn't know about. However, seeing Jordan that day brought a surge of anxiety. And then, 2 weeks later, something shocking happened. It was on a day of heavy rain. There's a heavy rain and thunderstorm warning from noon today. Be careful when you come back from your part-time job. As usual, Steve mentioned this while eating breakfast and reading the newspaper. Just as he said, the weather turned terrible in the afternoon. Steve also came home soaked around 8 p.m. The heavy rain pounded on the roof, making the TV hard to hear. Shall we go to bed soon? Just as we were about to head to the bedroom, the doorbell rang. Who could it be at this hour? When I checked the monitor, Jordan's face, looking down, was displayed. Steve. It's Jordan. We hurriedly opened the door. There stood Jordan, completely drenched. Jordan. What brings you here at this hour? Then, Jordan turned around, still looking down. Is Alice with you? I took Alice, who had been asleep on Jordan's back, into my arms. Please, could you let Alice stay for dinner and the night? Jordan muttered, with rain dripping from his bangs. Come inside, quickly. I took Alice, and Steve led Jordan into the house. Alice was wearing a raincoat, and Jordan must have sacrificed his own dryness to keep her dry with an umbrella. She wasn't wet at all despite the heavy rain. Since Alice was sound asleep, we decided to let her sleep in the bedroom as is. Meanwhile, we had Jordan head straight to the shower, being all soaked. I prepared some warm food while he was taking a shower. It's Steve's, so it might be a bit big. No, maybe not. Jordan, you've grown so much since we last saw you. In the rush of the moment, I hadn't really taken it in, but even Alice, who had been a baby the last time I saw her, had grown incredibly. We marveled at the growth of our grandchildren, whom we hadn't seen in 3 years. Contrary to our warm feelings, Jordan sat in front of the meal we had prepared without touching it, his gaze fixed downwards. Jordan, can you tell us what happened? Jordan briefly looked up, but quickly averted his eyes when our gazes met. Jordan, we can't help if you don't talk to us. Steve said, his tone growing firmer out of frustration. Startled, Jordan then began to speak in a voice as faint as a mosquito's buzz. I'm not liked by Mom. According to Jordan, Emily had never been fond of him from the beginning. Despite this, Jordan was initially happy to have a mother figure and tried hard to be liked by Emily. However, after Alice was born, Emily's attitude towards Jordan became even colder. I really love Alice, you know. She's my sister after all. But Mom could say to me without batting an eye that she wouldn't take care of me because we're not blood related. Dad also took Mom's side and didn't help me at all. The revelations made my heart clench. I had thought they were happily living as a family of 4. I deeply regretted my naive assumptions. Why didn't you come to our house sooner? Because I thought you two hated us. Jordan started to cry. According to him, Emily had told him that we stopped coming around because we didn't want to take care of our grandchildren. No. Wasn't it Emily who didn't let us see them? I wanted to argue, but Jordan continued talking through his tears. Today, Mom didn't prepare dinner for me again. And then Alice stood up for me. Angry that her own daughter sided with Jordan and betrayed her, Emily, in a fit of anger during the heavy rain, kicked Jordan and Alice out. You remembered where we live, huh? Steve patted Jordan's head. I ran out of money after buying an umbrella and a raincoat for Alice. I took the train as far as I could, then walked the rest of the way here. That's why it's so late. I'm sorry. No, Jordan, you have nothing to apologize for. If I stay, I'll be a nuisance. Please take care of Alice. Jordan said this and then ran towards the entrance. Hey, wait. Steve tried to stop him, but Jordan, now as tall as him, shrugged him off. Don't be ridiculous. I can't take care of a child. Furious, Steve spat those words before chasing after Jordan again and restraining him. Please, at least take care of Alice. Jordan stopped struggling and hung his head low. Catching up to them, I took Jordan from Steve and, while stroking his back, said, Jordan, you've got it all wrong. We've always wanted to see you. But Brian and Emily wouldn't let us. Really? For the first time, Jordan looked me straight in the eye. I explained everything to Jordan to clear up the misunderstanding, how we had tried numerous times to visit. How we sent money to Emily for Jordan and Alice's birthdays because we couldn't see them. And everything else that had happened over the last 3 years. Jordan looked surprised throughout the explanation. But he seemed to believe my words, and the look of despair on his face was replaced by a healthier complexion. I didn't know anything about the money, too. I think Mom must have been using it for herself. I was stunned by the revelation. Jordan further shared that he had managed to receive tuition for high school but got nothing for lunch or school supplies. So he had to work part-time to scrape together some money. The part-time job of deliveries? Did you know? I saw someone who looked like you delivering food the other day. I called out, but you rode past on your bike without noticing. Jordan nodded sadly. Since I started high school, Mom stopped making dinner for me. I chose that place because they provide meals, so I could save on dinner. But today, I unexpectedly had no shifts, and sure enough, when I got home, there was no dinner prepared for me. Then Alice stood up for me. Tears started to well up in Jordan's eyes again. It's all right now. I continued to soothe Jordan's back. Was Brian also cold to you? Steve asked, barely containing his anger. Yeah. He just does whatever Mom says. I liked my previous mom better. Dad used to be kinda back then. With that, Jordan burst into loud sobs. Steve was at a loss for words. For a while, only Jordan's crying filled the house, but as he began to calm down, Steve finally spoke. Jordan, what I said earlier about don't be ridiculous was directed at Brian and the others, not you. We will definitely protect Alice and you. That's right. You don't have to worry about anything anymore. Oh, has Alice woken up? I glanced towards the living room door and saw Alice peeking around the corner with a wary expression. Alice, do you remember us? Alice shook her head vigorously. Steve and I exchanged a wry smile. That makes sense, the last time we met was on your first birthday. Look. I said, showing her a photo from the birthday party that was displayed in our house. Alice's face lit up at the sight. Then she ran over to Jordan. Jordan. What's up? I'm hungry. Steve and I looked at each other again and smiled. Alright, I'll warm up the food again, so both of you eat up. Jordan, please share some with Alice. You know her best. Alice waking up seemed to bring a small smile back to Jordan's face. The two of them happily ate their meal and soon fell asleep together in bed, cozy and close. As I watched their innocent sleeping faces, I had to hold back tears. After all the hardship they'd faced, it was our duty now to protect Jordan and Alice. With this resolve, Steve and I got into the car and headed straight to Brian's house. The lights were still on inside, and when we rang the doorbell, Brian came out. Wait a minute. Ignoring Brian's protests, we made our way inside. In the room, empty alcohol cans littered the table, and Emily was lounging on the sofa, laughing giddily with a beer in hand as she watched TV. What are you doing here at this hour, Steve and Linda? What do you mean, what are we doing here? Remember what you've done. Steve shouted, causing Emily to flinch. Initially surprised, Emily set down her beer can and glared at us defiantly after sitting up straight. So, Jordan and Alice went to your place. They came soaking wet. It seems you've been lying to them, telling them we didn't like them. And the money we've been sending for them as pocket money hasn't been reaching them at all. What were you thinking? We are their parents. It's none of your business. Brian said, sitting down beside Emily, both of them staring us down. They blamed us for believing everything Jordan said. The parental rights for Jordan and Alice belong to us. We don't want outsiders interfering. We've been raising them properly, Emily said. Properly? You've been treating Jordan like he's an inconvenience. Just then, the doorbell rang again. Who's next? Muttering, Brian went to open the door, only to find two police officers standing there. Yes, I had called the police from the car and asked them to come to Brian's house. Without hesitation, the officers entered and began looking for the children. Where are Jordan and Alice in this heavy rain? Of course, Brian and Emily couldn't answer that. I explained everything that had happened today in front of everyone. You'll need to come with us to the station for questioning, one officer said to Brian and Emily. And so, they were taken to the police station. The next day, we were also called in for questioning. Jordan was interviewed alone, while I was allowed to be present with Alice due to her young age. Mommy and Daddy ignore my brother. They don't even make dinner for him. My brother goes to school during the day and works hard at night. I want to help my brother. The 4-year-old Alice earnestly explained. Despite her young age, Alice too was hurt by the abnormal family situation. Tears welled up in my eyes. Alice looked at me curiously. Why are you crying? The police officers are like heroes of justice, Mrs. Parker at the daycare said so. They'll definitely help us. Haha, you're right. Everything will be okay, now. Please take care of it. Alice said to the police officer with a bright smile. After the grandchildren's testimonies were taken, it was our turn to be called in. We'd like to discuss the future of your grandchildren. We expressed our desire not to return Jordan and Alice to their parents under any circumstances and our intention to take full responsibility for raising them. The police advised us to consult with a lawyer. Following their advice, we reached out to Michael, a lawyer acquaintance of Steve. 5 days later, Michael went to speak with Brian and Emily, who were in custody. He discussed the following 4 points with them. First, our intention to adopt Jordan and Alice to gain their custody. Second, a prohibition on any future contact with Jordan and Alice by Brian and Emily. Third, no further assistance from us. Fourth, the house they were living in was scheduled for demolition next month, and they needed to vacate immediately. Brian and Emily initially reacted with fury. Don't you have any parental feelings? Brian shouted. To which Michael calmly replied. Jordan is your biological child, isn't he? Do you think someone who treats their own child so harshly has the right to say that? Brian was left speechless by Michael's sound argument. Eventually, the adoption of Jordan and Alice by us was finalized, and we have been raising them with love, enjoying peaceful days. Despite Brian's repeated objections to the demolition of the house, the scheduled demolition went ahead. When the house was demolished in front of him, Brian reportedly collapsed to his knees and couldn't get up for a while. Furthermore, rumors of abuse circulated at his workplace, leading to unauthorized absences and eventual dismissal. Thus, Brian and Emily ended up penniless. For a while, they lived quietly somewhere, but then Brian approached me asking for help. "I'll report you to the police if you keep pestering us." After that warning, he seemed to give up and became silent. Since then, I've had no information about them. Meanwhile, Jordan and Alice, initially tense after moving in with us, gradually relaxed as we spent more time together. Jordan quit his job and focused on his studies and club activities, happily attending school every day. "Grandpa, what time are we leaving tomorrow?" "The tide is full at 8 a.m., so we leave at 3 a.m. If I'm not up by then, wake me up." "What kind of plan is that?" Having retired, Steve started fishing with Jordan. They have caught various fish, thoroughly enjoying their new hobby. "So, here's the deal." Steve stood beside me. All right, I'll pack breakfast." "Sandwiches are good, right?" "Of course, thank you." Then Alice came trotting over, puffing out her cheeks. "If you're leaving at 3 a.m., what time does she have to get up to make breakfast?" "It's tough for Grandma. Such a thoughtful girl at only 5 years old. Alice is the idol of our home and a great comfort to me." Sorry. I'll do it myself from now on." "I'll catch your favorite fish, okay?" "Really?" "Yay. Good luck, Grandpa and Jordan." Her excitement over the promised reward was utterly adorable. I used to worry about what I'd do with all the free time in retirement, but those concerns were unfounded. Thanks to Jordan and Alice, we're living our days filled with sparkle. I don't know if the scars in their hearts will ever fully heal. But I hope they can feel that here, laughing together as a family every day, there's a place where they can come back to, safe and sound. That's my wish.